We helped a marketing agency add another 50K MRR within 6 months without having to sign a single new client. And so all that was needed for this were just to make a few simple tweaks to issues that were hidden beneath the surface. And these were issues that we see in most of the agencies that we work with. This all came down to one simple problem: churn. When we started working with this client, their churn rate was typically over 20% per month, which means that every month they were losing over 20% of their clients and also of their revenue. And so that puts you in a position where you constantly have to sign more and more clients just to make up the gap of what you lost. And only once you pass that is when you will actually start growing. And now 6 months later, and after making some of these tweaks, their churn rate has gone from 20 to 30% to now 7% on average for the last quarter. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we uncovered the problems that were completely hidden for them, but problems that were quietly draining thousands a month from their agency without them even fully realizing it or knowing how to put a stop to it. My name is Joe de Wit and I run AgenCFO, where we help 6- and 7-figure agencies take control of their finances so they know exactly what's going on in their business and what needs to be done to make and keep more money. This case is a perfect example of how much extra money you can make and how much faster you can grow by really fixing all of the leaks and inefficiencies that you might have on the back end. Because 99% of the agencies that I know are obsessed with acquiring new clients, but don't realize that they can even make more profit by applying that same obsession, or even just half of that obsession, to retaining and growing the clients they already have. Because when we started with this client and we asked them how many clients they had lost that month, they had to manually count it to get to an answer. And then when we asked how much money those clients represented, they couldn't really tell us. And while they were celebrating signing 15 new clients that month, they had no idea that they had lost 12 clients. And so it's like trying to fill a leaky bucket with a massive hole in the bottom, which is both exhausting but also very expensive, because you're not just losing revenue when a client churns, you also have to acquire another client to replace them, which has a cost, both a direct cost in terms of sales, but also a cost on the team and a cost in time, because it always takes more time to onboard a new client than simply to retain another client. And so now that we're 6 months later, everything is tracked, their churn is down to 7% on average, and we netted another 50K from this difference in churn, what we would have lost if nothing had changed. And all of that with no extra acquisition cost, no extra strain on the team, and just a much happier agency life. Pretty good deal if you ask me. And now I'll share exactly how we did this so you can do the same. The first thing we did was to simply track what nobody was watching. Exactly how many clients were leaving every month and how much revenue this really represented. It sounds obvious, but it's only when you pull up a chart like this for the first time that you will truly understand how bad your churn might be and how much money you are leaving on the table by not obsessing over retention. These are not complicated financial concepts. It's just basic tracking that was implemented here. But by seeing these numbers, it completely changed the way that they viewed their business and how they can actually approach this to scale even faster in the future. So let's go through some of these problems that we now uncovered by looking at the hard numbers. The first problem was a surprising one, but one that I still know is very common for agencies in this kind of 6- and 7-figure range. And that is a chaotic billing process. Because here's what happened. The owner would literally sit down multiple times per week and honestly just think about which clients should be billed that day. And so some clients would get billed according to schedule very nicely every month, whereas other clients, they might get delayed by a week. Maybe if things were running behind or if the service wasn't really fulfilled to the best way yet, then the clients would just have their bill delayed, to try and time it a little bit better and like only send it when they were happier. But this created this nightmare scenario where there were months when they even forgot to bill a certain client. Or, and here's the real kicker, they had cases when they finally send those delayed invoices that the clients would just end up questioning the invoices and ask like where this is coming from, like what the schedule is, why the amount is the way it is. And so instead of just paying and being happy that they had a delayed invoice, they would now start to question it and often see this as a trigger to cancel the service. And so this was not only a nightmare for cash flow because the costs were not delayed, it was just the invoices that were delayed, but it also contributed to this retention issue. And so here is what we implemented instead. We simply moved every client to a strict monthly billing cycle with clear contracts that state when these invoices are going out. Now, most of the clients are just put on an automatic retainer, which makes this even easier and completely reduces the questions from the clients and that second thought that they might have every time they have to pay an invoice. But for those that had some custom deals, it is still just a very strict monthly process where the clients just know what they're paying for when it's coming up, and this has greatly reduced the churn and the questions we were getting. Just to bring that point home, if you are currently not billing your clients in a professional way, you can even think about this from maybe a software tool that you're using or a gym membership that you have, and just imagine that, what it would look like if, they were just billing you at random amounts with no interval. They would just send you a random message like, oh, now your invoice is due. You would probably start to second guess that service and that invoice, and it might cause you to cancel it. And so clear billing is always a much better solution, and it creates a lot more transparency for everyone and has a real impact on retention. And so billing was the first part of the puzzle. But as we started digging deeper, there were even bigger problems that came to light that again had a simple fix but a big impact. And the next one here was the classic issue of having the right people in the wrong seats. Because when we started breaking down the churn, not just for the agency as a whole, but actually at the level of the account managers, we learned that there were two account managers who were consistently churning a lot more than the average account manager did. And in some cases, these account managers even churned over 40% of their clients in a given month, while the others typically maintain this below 10% on average. And so the owner told us that he already had a gut feeling about these clients and that they weren't getting great results, but without the actual numbers, this was not something even actioned or really thought too much about. What you usually see is that there's a couple people in the team who are not bad people and they might be great at what they do, but they might just struggle to really deliver on the role that they have in the company. And so the clients were getting great work, but they were just not having a great communication, which caused them to leave. We helped this client restructure the team and put these two account managers in a more internal role where they can still deliver a great service, but are not the key point for the clients, which was causing the retention issues. Without having to fire anyone, we got to a situation that is much better and actually has a great impact on churn, which brought it down even further. But then with this part fixed, there was one more area that was causing clients to leave at a consistent rate. And the solution for this is one that often contradicts what you're hearing in the space. And this is about pricing. Because the final issue that we discovered was that a lot of the clients who left simply couldn't afford the service, or they just weren't getting a good enough result to justify the cost of this. And while you do not want to retain bad clients, and it's also completely fine that your service does not get the best result in the world for everyone, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't at least try to find a solution for the clients that you would still like to keep working with, despite them not being a great fit for you. And that's when we created something that we call a more scaled down version of the service. So what we did is that we reduced the typical price by around 40% for the clients that indicated they wanted to leave or they were just not getting the ROI. But the most important difference here is that we didn't just lower the price. We also lowered the cost and the scope of the service that was being delivered to make it work for their situation. And so what we did is we put a more junior team member on the delivery side. We limited the number of revisions and we simplified the reporting that was received, because truthfully, the clients that were qualified for this, they didn't need all of the extras and the more senior stuff. They just needed someone to help them manage their situation and kind of scale up so they can then again graduate to the normal or the higher ticket service. And so by making these changes, we made sure that we kept our margin on these clients the same, so that it still made sense for us to actually retain them and for them to still receive a service in line with what they were paying. And so the important thing here is that lowering your prices is not always the right solution, and it can be a fatal mistake if you will just start offering discounts for clients without changing anything in your delivery, because that will just cause you to lose a lot of money and get a lot of headaches. But if you do see a real opportunity by growing faster, by having this slightly cheaper service, then as long as you maintain a strong margin on them, this can be a great way to retain the clients. And then as you start growing with them, they can again, go back to the original service. And that way you don't have to keep acquiring new clients, but you can just meet them where they're at and then help them grow to where they want to get to. And so when we put these 3 fixes together, a better billing process, a better team alignment, and a strategic downselling process, the results were simply quite incredible. Because over that time period, we saw that churn dropped from 25% to 7%, while the revenue is now at the 200K a month mark. And the most beautiful thing about all of this is that they didn't have to spend a single dollar on anything. No new acquisition cost, no new team members or big investments needed to build out entirely new services, no new hires needed and new training periods. It was just all internal by making sure we tweaked some of these issues that were hidden behind the surface. And that is the power of looking at the numbers. Nobody is really watching, because when you find out how you can keep, 90% plus of your clients, then you don't have to sign that many new clients every month to really start growing quickly. And every client you retain is another good chunk of profit that goes straight into your pocket and not to any acquisition costs. This case study just focused on this big problem around client churn. But the truth is that there are a dozen other key areas or blind spots that are probably draining some or most of your agency's profits right now. And so in one of my previous videos, I broke down the complete financial picture of an agency, showing you exactly what numbers you should be tracking, what the bottlenecks are, how to spot these bottlenecks, and how everything fits together in your agency as a whole, so you know exactly what to look for and how to make the connections between the different departments and team members and metrics that you should be tracking. I'll put that video either in the description or here on the screen. And so I highly recommend you watch that, because that is a fundamental video to really understand how the finances of your agency functions. Because if you can understand this and you know how to be more profitable, know how to earn more from your clients, know how to get clients for less, and how to structure your team in a more profitable way, then that will give you a true competitive advantage. And so with that said, I'll see you in the next video.